owner suite. Full of light. Look at how tall these windows are. Beautiful. And it's a beautiful day in Buffalo today too. Yes, it is nice here. Sometimes we do get good weather here in Buffalo, occasionally, especially in the summer. And again, here you've got a view of the cages that were designed to protect or confine the inmates. This is one of the king-size rooms here at the Hotel Richardson Hotel, I should say. Very nice. You see the ceilings, super high. Must be 20-foot high ceilings. Gives you an idea of the curtains. Little desk, ironing board, closet area, modern bathrooms. View. Richardson Hotel. Look at how high the ceilings are, Janet. Try to show how high these ceilings are here. Amazing. You don't see hotels like this anymore. All kinds of cool old black and white photos over here. And real fireplaces, real books, not like fake books at some modern hotel these days. Big, huge windows. Love this place. Look at all the natural light. Beautiful. Very cool. This has got to be one of the most beautiful historic hotels I've ever stayed in. I'm in my hometown of Buffalo, New York. I come back here a few times every year to visit my parents. Usually I stay with somebody, a relative or whatever. This time I decided I wanted to stay at this new Richardson Hotel. Doesn't look new, right? It looks old, but what a storied history of this place. My family has a personal connection to this place as well too. So I'll tell you a little bit about this place. This is now the Richardson Hotel, but it started as the Buffalo State Asylum for the Insane. Construction of this place began in 1872. It's called the Richardson Hotel because Henry Richardson was the gentleman who was the architect, but also Frederick Law Olmsted, who created Central Park and many other beautiful places around the country, was responsible for the grounds of this place as well too. So he was the landscape architect for the project. And the idea back then was to create a sort of humane and beautiful place for what they called back then, they were not politically correct, the insane, because they thought that if you treated people well and gave them a calming environment, then perhaps that they would be cured of their insanity. So this was a very humane approach to mental illness at the time. And it took 8 years before anyone actually moved into, any of the insane actually moved in here. In 1880, there were about 300 patients who moved into the complex. It was a little bit smaller back then. Not all of the buildings were there. And then eventually, it took another 20 years before the place was actually completed. So it was completed, what does that make us? 1892, something like that. And Henry Richardson did not live for the completion. He died in 1886 of a kidney disease. But what an incredible place. I mean, if you were going to be institutionalized, this would be the place for it, right? There was a working farm adjacent to this, so that if people wanted to, they weren't required to work on the farm, but they could if they wanted to. So you could work on the farm. There were tennis courts here. It was really a beautiful place for the mentally ill to live. In the 1960s, President Kennedy signed some legislation orienting mental illness, moving away from the state asylum system, which was the New York State system here, to a more of a community development system, where communities where people with mental illnesses were sent into smaller community centers. So they started to phase people out of here, but it peaked in the 1950s with about 3,000 patients. And in the 1960s, one of my uncles actually lived here for a couple of years. It's sort of a tragic story of what happened to him. but I do have a relative. I never met him, so this is before I was born. I was born in 72, in case you're wondering. But in any case, I do have a family member who lived here for a couple of years. In 1974, all of the patients of this place were transferred out, and it was emptied out. And for decades, this place sat empty, and the grounds around here were roped off. You couldn't come here. You couldn't walk your dog here as you can now. It was really sort of a tragedy for the whole city. It was really it became a huge eyesore. The buildings were falling down. They needed a tremendous amount of repair. The roofs were in danger of collapsing. The structures were not sound. And so a ton of work needed to be done in order to reestablish this, to repurpose this as something else. And that finally happened, I believe it was 2017. A place called the Hotel Henry opened up here. Hotel Henry lasted a few years, but it did not survive the pandemic. All of the restrictions here in New York State, this is one of the strictest lockdown states in the country, made it basically impossible to run the hotel. And it shut down in 2020, and it was closed for a couple of years, and it was rebought now. And it just reopened a few years ago as the Richardson Hotel. The owners, since it's a National Historic Landmark, were not able to buy this building. They were able to lease it for 99 years. So it's technically a lease. And it's interesting, the owners of this place also own the Buffalo Hyatt, and I think the Statler, and a couple of other hotels. And it is a beautiful place. I'm going to show you all around. So stay tuned. Thank you, guys.